Shohei Ohtani and Babe Ruth feel like the same glitch in the baseball matrix, just dropped into two totally different operating systems. One is doing superhero stuff in the age of high-speed cameras and 100-mile-per-hour relievers. The other basically kicked down the door and rewired what baseball even wanted to be. And the winner really comes down to one rule. Is greatest about mastering the hardest version of the job, or being the person who changed the entire job for everyone else? To keep it fair, this is about the full baseball package, how they win, what their very best stretch looks like, how far the shockwave travels, and what still exists because they happened. Ohtani's origin story reads like a modern sports myth that somehow passed the fact check. He comes over from Japan with the audacity to say, yeah, the plan is to pitch and hit. In today's MLB, that's like walking into a Michelin star kitchen and announcing a side hustle as the head chef and the sommelier. And then he actually does it at an MVP level. In 2024, even while not pitching after elbow surgery, he puts up a season so ridiculous it sounds like a video game settings error. 54 homers and 59 stolen bases, the first true 50-50 season, and an NL MVP. And if that sounds fake, here's the no-way footnote. He punched the 50-50 ticket with a 6-for-6, 3-homer night in Miami. Real life, real scoreboard. Ruth's origin story is older, rougher, and somehow louder. He becomes a star with the Red Sox as a pitcher first. Yes, pitcher. Then morphs into the most feared hitter on earth. The pitcher to superstar slugger thing sounds normal now, only because Ruth made it feel normal. His career ends up with 714 home runs, a 690 slugging percentage, and even a 1.164 OPS listed right on his Hall of Fame page, like it's casual. And here's a quick myth-buster that matters. The Babe wasn't just a big guy who ran into a few old-timey fastballs. He had a real pitching career. 94 wins, 46 losses, and a 2.28 ERA. That's not trivia. That's ace-level production hiding in plain sight. Both careers have a fork-in-the-road moment where one decision changes everything. For Ruth, it's the famous sale from Boston to the Yankees, baseball's equivalent of trading away a money printer. For Ohtani, it's the league and team actually letting him stay a true two-way player long enough to become the best version of the idea, even as modern baseball tries to sort everyone into neat little boxes. Now, how they win. Ohtani's method is basically modern optimization with a chaos engine inside it. At the plate, it's elite power plus speed, and that speed isn't garnish, it's part of the pressure. When he's right as a two-way player, he's also giving innings on the mound and doing it with top-level results. In 2023, before the elbow injury ended the pitching side, he wins AL MVP again while slashing .304, .412, .654 with 44 homers as a hitter, and he's also posting a 3.14 ERA as a pitcher. That's not pretty good at both. That's best in the league at one and very strong at the other in the same season. But there's a cost to Ohtani's method, and it shows up in the medical file and the calendar. Modern pitching is violent, and modern hitting is relentless, and doing both means double the workload and double the ways a season can derail. His 2024 year is a perfect example. Historic offense, no pitching because the elbow needed surgery. Ruth's method is less optimized and more earthquake. He takes a sport that at the time leaned heavily towards slap hits, speed, and strategy, and he just starts launching baseballs like he's trying to relocate them to a different zip code. It's not only the home runs, it's the idea that home runs should be the point. The Hall of Fame literally frames him as the guy leading that powerhouse Yankees run, and he leads the Eric and Negan home runs 12 times. There's a trade-off for Ruth, too, and it's kind of the reverse of Ohtani's. Ruth had the pitching foundation, but becoming Ruth the hitter meant not living as Ruth the ace. Ohtani is fighting to keep both identities alive in a sport that doesn't want to accommodate it. Ruth is the guy who willingly set one identity down because the other one was about to change the world. You've made it this far. I got a favor to ask of you. I'm trying to quit my day job to pursue my passion of creating content for a living. Be sure to subscribe and like the video. It'll mean a lot and help get me closer to my dreams. Thanks. Now, back to the video. So who wins in terms of baseball skills? On pure method difficulty, Ohtani gets the edge. Doing the two-way thing now against specialized pitching, scouting reports that know everything, and bodies that break faster is like playing a doubleheader every day and pretending it's normal. Pick your poison, the hardest job or the biggest shockwave. But then the conversation hits peak execution, and this is where it gets spicy, because both guys have no way that happens seasons. Ohtani's peak has multiple flavors. There's the two-way peak, like 2023, MVP, 44 homers, elite on base and slugging, plus frontline pitching results until the injury. Then there's the pure position player peak in 2024. He doesn't pitch and instead turns into a one-man run factory who also steals bases like a leadoff guy. Again, 54 homers, 59 steals, first 50-50 season, and an NL MVP. And if the resume needed extra sauce, he signs that absurd $700 million deal with massive deferrals, basically turning his own contract into a long-term financial strategy case study. Now, Ruth's peak is the kind of peak that makes historians argue about whether baseball accidentally allowed a demigod into the league for a while. In 1920, he hits 54 homers. Then he breaks it again in 1921 with 59. Then in 1927, he hits 60, each time resetting what normal even means. And it's not just single-season fireworks. The Hall of Fame lists his 714 career homers, .690 slugging, and 1.164 OPS like permanent monuments. Babe Ruth long held the career SLG King status in MLB framing, but after MLB integrated Negro League statistics in May 2024, Josh Gibson is listed ahead in career slugging percentage and OPS on the updated leaderboards. Here's the sneaky thing. Ohtani's peak is happening in the most competitive ecosystem baseball has ever had. Ruth's peak, though, is so far above his own era that it basically becomes a different sport. That distance from the pack matters, and it's a real point for Ruth. Then comes impact radius, the part where the matchup stops being player versus player and becomes force of nature versus force of nature. Ruth doesn't just rack up stats, he becomes the face of the live ball era shift and the home runs coronation as baseball's main event. MLB literally calls him the figurehead at the prow of that era and points to the 54-homer explosion in 1920 as a headline-stealing turning point. SABR also notes the broader context, cleaner balls, changing conditions, and then Ruth's popularity and success pushing other hitters toward power. In other words, he didn't just ride the wave, he helped steer it. And culturally, Ruth becomes shorthand for baseball itself. That's not just famous athlete, that's the sports mythology got a main character. Ohtani's impact is different, and honestly, it's the most modern kind of impact, global and structural. He's a day-to-day bridge between MLB and Japan in a way the league doesn't have to manufacture. And the hardware backs it up, date stamp it. By 2025, he's at 4 MVPs total, and every one of them is unanimous. He's also the rare guy who's won MVP in both leagues twice, each in each. The contract itself becomes proof of gravity, $700 million, with deferrals so extreme that even the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis breaks down the time value of money angle. That's bigger than baseball gossip. That's baseball colliding with economics class. And on the field, the 50-50 season becomes a permanent reference point, the way 60 homers used to be. Still, if the question is whose impact radius changed the entire sport's trajectory, Ruth has the wider blast zone. Ohtani is reshaping what's possible inside modern baseball. Ruth rewrote what baseball wanted to be. Remember the operating system thing? This is it. Ohtani is overclocking the game. Ruth rewrote the code. Finally, legacy and durability, the what's still standing decades later test. Ruth's legacy is basically indestructible. He's a Hall of Fame pillar. His records and rate stats are still used as the "this is what video game numbers look like in real life" benchmark. And his name is woven into the Yankees' identity and baseball's folklore. Even his single-season home run peak stays a sacred number for generations. The Hall of Fame points out his 60 stood as the record for 34 years. Ohtani's legacy is already real, but it's also still loading. The durability case is being written in real time. Multiple unanimous MVPs, a historic 50-50 season, and the modern two-way blueprint that younger players can point to and say, no, it's not impossible. But longevity matters here, and Ruth has had a century for his story to calcify into legend. So, the winner is Babe Ruth, by that definition, the guy who changed baseball's trajectory. But the rule flip is easy to see. If greatest means who pulled off the hardest version of the job, especially in the modern specialization era, Ohtani has a real argument. Being an MVP bat while also being a legitimate pitcher in this century is like being a top-tier quarterback and a top-tier pass rusher at the same time. It's so difficult the sport basically stopped expecting it until he showed up and forced everyone to watch. In the end, this matchup isn't really about who's more impressive. They're both ridiculous. It's about what kind of greatness gets rewarded, the guy who built the skyscraper or the guy who figured out how to sprint up it while carrying another one on his back. Next time, it'd be fun to toss Ohtani into another modern unicorn matchup because baseball history suddenly has more than one.